Welcome back to the Hopeful Homestead, everybody, and today I'm going to be showing you guys exactly what we plan on building here at the Hopeful Homestead, this 21-acre beautiful piece of property located in South Florida. Now, welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk. My name is Chad, and as I said before, this is the Hopeful Homestead. And in this series of videos, I like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you guys. I like to think I'm talking to all the husbands and dads out there, and I usually talk about topics where we're discussing some hard things in life and just sort of encouraging each other and figuring out how to deal with things. But in today's video, we're talking about what my wife and I are planning to do with this 21-acre property here that we're calling the Hopeful Homestead. Oh, it's good coffee this morning. Now, if you didn't catch my other video I did a little tour video of this campsite, and behind the camera, a little tiny cabin on wheels that I built. I built all of this to set up out here as a way to have my family have something to enjoy while we're waiting and jumping through all the hoops that it is to try to get approved for funding and for permitting for everything that we're trying to do here on a piece of property that's got wetlands riddled throughout it that are protected, and obviously being South Florida, all kinds of hurricane protections we have to deal with. It's been proving to be much more expensive and much more time consuming than we originally thought it could be trying to do what we want to do down here. And we feel like we've hit the jackpot finding this 21-acre piece of property because it's, like I said before in other videos, bumping up against a 22,000-acre wildlife preserve known as the Allapattah Flats. It's surrounded by many other large 20-plus acre lots here, and we're in a sweet situation where we're in this rural countryside of Florida, but we're still only about 25 minutes from the beach. So in the same day, we will be able to get up in the morning, tend to our animals, have a cup of coffee on our front porch, and then head out in the Bronco or in our van and head to the beach and go spend a day at the beach with our kids, and then come on back into the countryside and ride some horses, pick some fruit from our crops, cook a homemade dinner, and just have a wholesome lifestyle that includes everything that we love from both the beach life and the country life out here. That's what South Florida has to offer. And moving on to what we're planning on actually building. Throughout this video, I'll throw up some graphics that will showcase some of the stuff that we're going to be doing that are actually straight out of the designs and plans that we've been working with an architect creating. Starting off with the main event here is the main farmhouse. This is South Florida. Most homes here are built on concrete slabs that are level with the ground and don't really have porches. They have patios, concrete slab patios that extend out from it, but I wanted no part of that. I'm from Northern Virginia. I grew up in the rolling hills of Northern Virginia, and up there you can have beautiful country homes out in the countryside that either built up with crawl spaces or have raised decks on them, raised porches, and I wanted the authenticity of having a real wraparound porch that was raised and not flush with the ground outside like most homes are here. So that was my first request when we came to the architect designing the home. I wanted to see what could be done that could still be strong enough to meet hurricane and flood standards for Florida, but still give off that impression of an old school country home from up in Northern Virginia that I grew up loving, and something that would allow us to have a real wraparound porch. And what we ended up going with is something called a stem wall, a concrete stem wall. And what this does is allows the foundation of the home to still be raised up from ground level quite a bit, because the stem wall is basically a bump up where you're building up the foundation of dirt in a specific spot where the house is going to be, and you're putting a concrete slab across the top of that, but then having sort of end caps around the perimeter of the structure of the foundation that those concrete will be a right angle and then go straight down into the ground, and then the ground level outside of that will be 2 or 3 feet lower than the ground level that's under the concrete built up underneath of it. So that's what that concrete stem wall is, and it allows for the first level of the home to be elevated 2 or 3 feet above ground level outside, even though it's still technically sitting on a concrete slab on dirt without any sort of crawl space. And this allows us to be able to put a real hardwood porch, hardwood decking around almost the entire house. The wraparound porch is going to be 8 feet deep, and it is going to wrap around 3 sides of the home, only leaving one side of the house where there's a bump out for the dining room and then upstairs master bedroom that will be architecturally nice, and also provide one side of the house that will allow us to have parking where we can park, where the driveway will have a little offshoot where we have some spots to park, because that's another thing, is we didn't want to have a garage that was attached to the house. And I know that's a bit more unconventional, but from an authenticity standpoint of old country homes, you don't see old country homes with attached garages. And I wanted this to feel as authentic and real as possible. I wanted to have as much natural light pouring into the house as possible from every direction of the house. And so we knew we wanted to have an external garage anyways that could be a workshop and additional storage and stuff. So we knew, hey, we don't need to have an attached garage. We're going to go ahead and have that be a separate building. And then inside the house, it's going to be it's not some crazy house. It's a little over a 2,700 square foot home that has 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a nice kitchen, a nice living room, and a dining room. It's not anything crazy. We're not building a giant mansion here. And being that this is also a 2-story home, that's less common in South Florida as well because of hurricane standards. Most homes are built as those 1-floor, low-pitch roof line, just boring looking gray, just houses that have no personality. And so we're building a 2-story home. It's going to be stick built. It's not concrete cinder block, but we're doing 2x6s instead of 2x4s so that it still meets hurricane codes, and it's actually cheaper to build this way. This thing's going to have a metal roof on the porch, metal roof on the house. So it's going to be very, very hurricane protected and safe. All of the windows and doors are going to be hurricane grade, strong, impact resistant up to 160 miles an hour. It's going to be a fortress that's going to look old school and look authentic, but have all of the metrics met that make it completely safe for hurricanes. This is going to be a well water property, so we'll have our own water supply. We're going to have a full reverse osmosis system to treat the water, so it's going to be pristine, beautifully tasting and clean water. It's going to be great. And moving on from the main house, we were wanting to have a very spread out layout to make it feel like, taking advantage of the space we have with this 21 acres. And our driveway that starts up by the road, it comes straight directly towards that house, and it has a beautiful approach where when you're coming to visit, when we're coming home, you'll be coming down that long gravel driveway, driving directly towards the house, and then it sort of veers off around it, passing by where that little parking lot is I told you about. That'll be right off the side of the house, and then the driveway sort of curves and keeps going off to the right, and it curves past what will be a guest house as well, and continuing on to where the detached garage is that I mentioned before. So this driveway will interconnect all of those structures. And we had originally designed a much more expensive guest house that ended up being, it was only going to be 600 square feet and 2 little bedrooms and a tiny little kitchen. And the cost to build that in the same way, of same kind of construction materials as the main house, was going to be disproportionate to what the value it actually adds to the property. And we just decided that we're going to scrap that, and we're going to do something a little more unconventional with the guest house, let's say. So that'll be something we figure out as we're going through the process, but we will have some sort of guest house in that spot to be able to host family. And we're planning on having my wife's grandmother live there as well, and it's going to be important for us to have that capability with this property. And then moving on to the garage, that's going to be a metal steel building that is a hurricane rated building that is going to have 12-foot ceilings, 3 10x10 garage doors, a separate service entry door that's just a normal, pass-through door, and that'll be where I have the workshop all along that side of the garage. And we're going to build some heavy-duty shelving throughout the whole thing to be able to have a lot of storage in there. And it's going to be a glorious structure that's going to match metal roof. The whole theming of the style of this property is white siding with black trim and black metal roofs. And then moving on to the left of the house, if you continue past the house where the driveway is not connecting this, but beyond the left side will be where the barn is going to be. We're going to be building a monitor style barn that is actually a modular structure where this company we're hiring to be able to do this can bring in these 3 pieces that they build and assemble in their factory, and they ship them down, and then they stack them up and attach them all together and slap a roof on, and boom, they're able to assemble the whole thing within less than, I think, 2 weeks after they ship it out here, which is pretty incredible. And it's a stick-built frame that is a completely hurricane-grade structure as well, that will have a metal roof as well. But it's going to be a 6-stall barn where the first floor is going to be a center aisle that'll pass completely through the whole structure, where you've got a literal barn door in the front and back where you can pass through it. You'll have a little workshop storage space on one side with a big stall and a tack room, and on the other side you'll have 4 same-size stalls that have individual doors that open up into what will be a 5-acre fenced horse paddock pasture. So we will potentially have maybe a milk cow out there, but we know for sure we're going to have at least 2 to 3 horses and a donkey is sort of what we're planning on having. Our little girls want a donkey, so we're going to get a donkey. And they will have 5 acres to graze, plenty of grass for them to be able to feed on year round here in South Florida, because the grass keeps growing all year. So we will have hardly any need to supplement that with any sort of other feed, which will be nice. Upstairs in the barn has, you know, I mentioned it has the stalls all down to the first floor with the center aisle passing through, and then there's a staircase that goes up to a loft above the center aisle. That's what makes it a monitor style barn. And we are planning to have that loft be a full-size gym. We're going to make it a barn gym. We're going to put some rubber flooring up there, put all our weights and exercise equipment up there, put an air conditioner in one of the windows because it's going to get hot up there for sure, and make it be an awesome place with incredible view of the property looking out the windows to be able to work out in and have no excuse to not stay fit while we're out here on the homestead. And then moving beyond that, so to the left of the barn will be that 5-acre horse pasture, and then directly behind the barn will be smaller fenced off areas that we're going to have for smaller animals. We're thinking about potentially having some goats. We would love to have a whole bunch of chickens for eggs and obviously chicken meat. And we were considering getting some ducks, and the sky's the limit, really. I mean, we're going to be able to truly figure out what we want to have and what kind of animals we want to raise, what kind of animals we want to be able to have for food, and what kind of animals benefit us more than others. And I'm sure we'll bring in some animals, decide we don't like those kind, get rid of them, bring in other kind of animals. We're going to, you know, go through a whole trial and error period. And if you've got any suggestions for us about what is easy to raise and maintain, and from a farm animal standpoint, please let us know in the comments what has worked for you, and that might help us make decisions on what kind of animals we want to have out here. But our goal is to be able to have plenty of eggs and milk and meat coming from these animals. And then moving on beyond that area is actually right here where this fence is behind me, and there's a gate that disconnects what is the front 10 acres, where everything I've been describing so far is all in the front 10 acres. And moving on beyond that comes back here is this little area where the campsite and cabin is. It's sort of like a little no man's land that's between the front 10 acres and the back, because there's a creek right here that passes through the wetland. There's a big 3-acre wetland that divides the majority of the front and back half of our property. And there's a little sliver of land that passes around the side of the wetland, which is where we are right now. And there's a creek that runs out of the wetland that cuts across the property. That is the definite delineator between the front and the back half. And so you come around there, you cross this creek, and then you got about 7 acres of just untouched, beautiful Florida countryside behind the wetland that is really secluded and enclosed, because you got the wildlife preserve and forest that are all behind our property line back there, and then you can't see the road or anything from back there at all. We're going to be putting in a 1-acre pond back there that we will stock full of fish, and we're actually using the dirt from digging that pond lake to be able to use for building up the foundations where the structures are. And it's cheaper to do that than it is to bring in dirt from an external source. So we get a free pond out of it by having a cheaper way of providing more dirt for building up the foundations for the house, which is pretty cool. We're going to fill that thing with some fish. We're going to build a dock on it, and I'd love to have a little hunting cabin that overlooks that thing back here, because that would all face west, so you'd have sunsets over the lake from a little porch on a little hunting cabin with a dock. I mean, you can't get much better than that for a weekend getaway without even having to leave your property. Just load up a little suitcase and hop on the side-by-side and head off to the back of the property and spend a weekend away at the hunting cabin on the lake. Obviously, those are big, crazy, audacious things we're going to be aspiring to that are way down the totem pole, down the line. But that, we have the ability to do it at some point if we want, and that's pretty cool with a piece of property like this. And then to the left of where that lake is actually currently what I've talked about in some of my videos, a big shooting berm that I had a buddy of mine that had a background in construction. He knew how to run a skid loader, so we rented a full-size skid loader and had him come out and spend a whole day scraping dirt up to build up into a 50-foot wide and 10-foot tall shooting berm that's also like 10 feet thick. It's an incredible shooting berm. And so that's a whole flat graded area and I built a couple of shooting target stands back there. I bought some more targets that are on different racks and stuff that I put over there. And it's an awesome place to be able to go have fun with friends and family, shooting some guns, target practicing, and it's just a blast to have that on your own property. And it's legal here in Florida because there's actually laws on the books with the state of Florida that if you live in an area where your lot is over 1 acre in size and the surrounding lots are over 1 acre in size, you're legally allowed to have your own private shooting range, which is really stinking cool. And then moving on from there, I plan to have, and I've used Google Earth to map this out, I plan on having a winding walking path that is a gravel, sandy path that I will be installing myself once we get out here and buy a actual tractor and all the equipment needed to be able to do this. I plan on putting in a mile-long walking path that weaves in and out of different parts of the property. It'll loop around that lake in the back, pass by the shooting range, come up, cross the creek here, pass by the campsite, weave in and out of the houses, and what will be also crops up at the front of the property as well. It'll weave in and out of that, and it'll also provide infrastructure for being able to move and get around the property a little bit more easily, because it's pretty rough and bumpy countryside here that my Bronco can handle no problem, but when you're riding around on a side-by-side and you hit a big bump, it almost throws you out of that vehicle. So having a nice level walking path, both for exercise and just enjoying the property, but also for being able to have infrastructure to be able to move things around and transport stuff around the property easily, is going to be great. And that brings me up to what I just mentioned. Up at the front of the property is going to be where crops are grown. We're going to have a greenhouse, we're going to have a medicinal garden, we're going to be having a fruit tree orchard where there's going to be hopefully apples, oranges, a lot of citrus, maybe some grapefruit. I'd love to have limes and lemons, be able to make my own key lime pie with my own limes here. Oh, it'd be incredible. And then also some vegetable gardens as well. So we're gonna be doing a lot. We're gonna be learning a lot. My wife and I, neither of us grew up with this lifestyle, but we're gonna be learning along the way, and I'm gonna be filming videos, documenting that whole process as we build all of this, going through all of the difficulties that it is and all the hoops to make it happen. But along the way, I'm gonna be documenting this whole thing so that you guys can see the journey as the Hopeful Homestead takes form and takes shape. And then once it's all done and we're out here, I'll keep filming videos about the lifestyle out here, about just living this life and learning all of the lessons along the way that we'll have to learn as well, I'm sure. But it's gonna be worth it, because when we actually live here in a beautiful farmhouse with all those things I just mentioned, and we can head out here and get in a tree stand and hunt some deer, hunt some wild hogs, you know, we in theory could have, from the fruit, the vegetables, the medicinal garden, the farm animals we're gonna raise, the wild animals that water onto the property between deer and wild hogs, we could have endless protein and vegetable sources and fruit sources that will allow us to almost never need to go buy any groceries. I know we'll still need to go get stuff here and there, but we will be in much more control over what we're putting in our bodies as we grow old together, my wife and I, and as our girls are being raised. And what a wholesome and awesome life that is, right? I mean, I'm so excited to be able to do this. But all right, guys, thanks for watching. And if you, like I said before, if you feel like sticking around, here's the video that was the tour of the campsite and cabin. Go click on that and check that out. My name is Chad. This is the Hopeful Homestead, and thanks for being here. See you again in the next video.